Hello, welcome back to me, Todd Slaughter, and more of my tales of the unexpected. Sandra Eileen Ann Smith. Do you know who she is? Well, you might get a clue if I tell you that she also went under the name of Susie Smythe. She was the daughter of an auto engineer who grew up in Belgrave, Leicester. She told me that she lived in Leicestershire and that her father worked in Whetstone for Sir Frank Whittle. He was the inventor of the jet engine. Well, who knows what's true there, because she tells so many stories, or she told, who knows what went on there, because she told so many stories. If you look at various posts, some say she was born in Berkshire. One thing that she was, or became, because she was very, very well educated and had a great pedigree and spoke fluent French, she ended up in a French TV series called Trois Étoiles et Tournée. She claimed that Vivien Leigh was her godmother, although she never ever met Vivien Leigh. She told me that her father worked in Whetstone for Sir Frank Whittle, and he was the man who invented the jet engine, and he invented it during the war. She was a very clever woman. She was privately educated, and she spoke fluent French. As a consequence, after virtually no acting experience, she got a starring role in the French TV series called Trois Étoiles et Tournée. I can't tell you if that's pronounced right, but Trois Étoiles is 3 stars, 3 stars over the town of Touraine. She claimed, she did, that Vivien Leigh was her godmother. However, she never actually met Vivien Leigh, although she told the story many times, but occasionally said she never met her. And as a consequence, she changed her name to Susanna Lee. And you will remember her because she starred opposite Elvis. She made 17 movies, one of which was Paradise Hawaiian Style. Now, she did really well because as she was employed by an American studio, she got what's known as residuals. In other words, every time it was shown on the telly, she got some money. Every time it was released as a VHS or a DVD, she got some money. Every time the name, image and likeness of her in connection with that movie, she got a few more quid. So she lived on her residuals and from some of the Hammer horror films she made. So on the whole, she was reasonably comfortable. She claimed, and I say claimed because I can only tell you what she told me, that she dated Richard Harris and Steve McQueen and Michael Caine and one of the Bee Gees, or perhaps all of the Bee Gees. She was seriously injured when flipping her Rolls Royce on the M1. But sometimes she said it was a sports car on the M6, so who knows. I met her a few times. I remember meeting her in Wheeler's Fish restaurant in Hertford Street, opposite Radio Luxembourg. I was there doing something, can't imagine what it was. This obviously was after Elvis died. And she said she was in town, and I said, well, I booked a table at Wheeler's, why don't you come across the road and we'll talk about it. Anyway, we met up in Wheeler's, and she said that she had decided that she was going to do a speaking tour. And she said, how do you think I look for my age? I said, well, you look like Susanna Lee. She said, but I've got good legs, haven't I? And she lifted her skirt up and showed me her legs, and yes, she had a fair pair of pins. What do you say? So then we tucked into a meal of fish. It's easy to eat, is fish. Sadly, during the feast, she broke her dentures and had to disappear into the loo to take her teeth out, which is not the nicest of things that the poor lady had to do. And she came back very gummy and didn't finish her meal. But she then said, if I can help her in any way, would I do so? And then she disappeared into the night. As I said, she was seriously injured when flipping her Rolls Royce on the M1, though she said at the time she was driving a sports car, so who knows what the real stories are. Now, she came to live with me for a couple of weeks. In fact, she lived in my shed because obviously she had nowhere to go. She was anxious to get to the States. She moved to the USA and lived with my sister-in-law on MacDill Air Force Base for 2 weeks. That turned out to be 2 years. My brother-in-law was a 3-star general in the American Air Force, so it wasn't too much of a problem to have a guest, but not for 2 years. And apart from that, she had a truck arrive with copies of her book, Paradise Susanna Style, arrive on base, which, you know, it's a secure brace, but they got away with it. After 2 years, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law were moved to another Air Force base, so she had to get out of town. So she rang me and said, do you know anybody that I can go and live with in Memphis? Because I'm anxious to go to Memphis and tell my stories about the time I spent with Elvis, which was, to me, a good idea. So I contacted Elvis's lawyer, Beecher Smith II, because I know him well, and he had a big house. His wife, I think, was a school headmistress. Wooden house it was, very, very pleasant. So she went and dossed down there for another year until Beecher took his laptop to be repaired. And what do you think happened? They found 10,000 images of child porn. So he ended up in prison. So she was out on her neck. However, then she toddled along and she found somewhere else to hang her hat. She met up with one of Elvis's former pilots, and she lived with him for a while. She also did a little bit of work for Graceland, did some personal appearances, and of course during Elvis Week and Birthday Week, she was always there selling her books and talking to fans. An incredibly intellectual person. She had lots to tell, much of which was fabricated, but it was such a great story. So that is what happened to Sandra Eileen Ann Smith, who died in December 2017.